Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to Mark. And we are joined by a lovely panel of panelists from Germany, Dubai, and Pakistan. Million Dollar Secrets is a platform to bridge experts to the Pakistani startup. We're trying to gather learnings from experts from around the world and summarize them and bring them to the Pakistani startup ecosystem. So I'm your host, Imran Jattala. I'm Director Innovation with Lahore Garrison University and co-founder of Center for Global Innovators. And my co-host for today is Ms. Bakhtawar. Ms. Bakhtawar.
Hello and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm the Managing Director of Being Professional, and along with Imran Jattala, I'm going to moderate today's session, which is going to be a very crisp and innovative session, having panelists across country and across the world now. So I hope that this is going to prove very useful for all the participants as well. So without further ado, I think Imran, we should proceed with the introductions.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Bakhtawar, for joining us. I'm really honored to introduce a lovely panel of experts. We are joined by Major General Obaid bin Zakria, Vice Chancellor of Lahore Garrison University. He has an extended career of 30 plus years with the Army, working with different Army institutions, and in his last leg, he was working with NUS, National University of Science and Technology. So he has a great experience of managing institutions and running educational institutes. And he's the brain behind turning Lahore Garrison University into one of the leading entrepreneurial universities of Pakistan. So welcome, sir. Next, we are
Thank you very
joined
much.
Next, we are joined by Mark Turrell, my professor of strategy at Harvard International Business School. And it would be amazing. You get to know from Mark, you listen that he got his university, his company listed on London Stock Exchange. So he built $1 million business. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Next, we're joined by Mr. Adnan Siddiqui. He's former country head IBM Pakistan. He's one of my mentors. He's been a great help, always advised me, always helped me with connecting to the great people in Pakistan. So welcome on board, sir.
Thank you.
And then we're joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Mustafa Minhas. We are friends for like 20 years. We were class fellows in undergrad, and Mustafa Minhas is founder of multiple companies. He's also director of ISRA University Islamabad, and he has built multiple businesses. He invested in real estate, in hospitality, and other verticals. So welcome, Mr. Mustafa.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much, Imran.
Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Imran, that we should now start with the question and answer session, because this whole panel is going to be very informative about the sessions that we're going to conduct. So I think the first question is actually from all of our panelists, and I would like that all of you answer this one by one. So the question is, how do you see the global economy and the post-COVID world for the startups? So perhaps we'll start from the national to the international perspective. If General Saab can start it.
Well, the subject which you have pointed out is a very vast subject, so I will try to converge it into a simple aspect as how does it affect our innovation and entrepreneurial subject, and especially for the startups. I believe this COVID and post-COVID, it has provided us with so much opportunities and so much of different opportunities, which were not even, I think, thought of, or even if they were thought of, they were operating at a very lower scale. But now they are at the forefront, and I think they would be contributing a lot to the economy of any country. I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. Like, for example, the home business, home cooking business was almost negligible pre-COVID, but now this is one of the mainstays. The logistics which supports it, even logistics starting from a company of 10 vehicles or motorbikes has become another very promising thing. So my point is, similarly, the remote medical side, hospitality, things are coming in the forefront, which otherwise you would have never ever thought of. And that is actually what is actually instigates your innovative and entrepreneurial skills. you should have ideas. You should have creative thinking at right there and then. You should see the problems and just solve them. So I think I see a very bright future. Instead of large scale companies, there will be SMEs which will take the forefront, and similarly individual people and small teams, partnerships. And I think for startups, it's going to be a great opportunity for next 2 to 3 years, where I don't see COVID being receding to that extent. They can operate in the same environment or obtaining environment which used to exist before COVID. So that's what my take is on what economy is going to be affected.
All
For
right.
these.
So now if we can have the opinion from Mr. Mustafa Minhas, so your take on this. Can you hear us?
Maybe you can.
Kindly unmute, Mr. Mustafa.
Okay, meanwhile, if Mr. Mustafa is adjusting his audio, we can have the answer from Mr. Adnan Siddiqui, sir, if you can share your opinion about this.
Yes, actually, Jain Saab has very rightly pointed out that as of today, there is tremendous opportunity for startups, for smaller companies. By the very definition of a startup, it means that it's a agile company who can turn around quickly and can come up with solutions to traditional problems in a very short span of time, and at a far lower cost than bigger established companies. So I personally believe that that the future is going to be with the smaller companies, with and at least for the next 1 to 2 years. By that time, we will know how things are going to turn around or turn up. But before that, it's definitely going to be the startup playground. And in that, the startups who are geared up to handle significant amount of business, those who have got solid, footing, those who are working on solid financial, I would say with solid financial base that they have, then of course they will be more successful than the other dreamers. I would call them. I mean, like I always divide startups into dreamers and doers, and the doer startups will be very successful in this time.
All right. So now, Mark, your take on this from an international perspective. How do you see the post-COVID world for startups and this global economy? How this has turned out for you?
So, I mean, I think if I divide things up into existing startups and new business creations. So if we talk about existing startups that are here, if you're in an industry that is badly affected, tourism, travel, everything else, you have to pivot to something else because your core revenue stream, your core market, your core customers, investing base will be basically destroyed for a year or maybe 2 years. In addition to that, there are so many players that used to compete over business that right now those that survive will keep fighting over scraps. So it's not a pretty place to be. If you look in the, but there are always opportunities when people start creating things, and costs will make a difference. So if you're able to operate from a low-cost environment, but have a remote ability to remote touch your customer, you have the ability to create some pretty incredible high-profit, high-margin international businesses from low-cost countries, and that gives a very interesting opportunity for Pakistan. I think the other thing is that if you just look generally, one of the industries that really hasn't been affected too much is IT, because our whole world is digital. So most IT workers are still working. I think some of the larger consulting firms outside of scope, but they'll take a little hit because their corporate clients will lose out. But the ability for 5 people, 10 people to create an amazing business in their garage or homes while on lockdown or without is amazing. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, but there's certainly some industries where you just wouldn't want to touch for another year and a half.
Yeah, Mark, if you're finished, I would like to add on to Mark. For example, I just pointed out one area of business, which was home business. Now, they are now actually, they would be striving for a digital presence. And I think digital marketing is going to be one of their tools. And it's now, it's very readily available. Similarly, I see a very big future for the area which we work in, that is education. The blended technology, the virtual teaching as compared to the F2F, which is face-to-face teaching, and then freelancing, making small groups, as I said. Similarly, there are companies which are specializing in e-commerce, for example, fintech, and one area which I think is going to grow, a very large one, is the cloud. The cloud, not only the security, but also the cloud usage and cloud applications. And these do not require very, very big companies. And I think, as Mark also pointed out, they will be the smaller people would be, or smaller group of people would be a real threat to these companies, because their overheads are less. They're more efficient because they're the main stakeholders in that companies. And as Siddiqui also mentioned, that there is a very extreme bright future. And above all, the time to come to market is now squeezed. You can come into the same market because small group, knowing the idea, niche market they are targeting, they can actually raise their business within days, which used to take years before this. So they are going to be very, very competitive. They are going to be very flexible. Therefore, taking decisions would be very quick. So I believe a big threat for the big companies, but that's not the main objective. The main objective is that how startups will be prospering, and that's I see a very, very bright future. And similarly, that is why where we fit in the CGI, this initiative of 500 billion, where we think that Pakistan economy can go to $500 billion by 2030. This is what is our main objective, this is our vision. Then we are going to break it down to small targets. And we are trying to break, the difference is we are trying to actually raise these students or our participants into real practical startups by the 4 weeks we finish. That's the difference between us and other innovation organizations. And I believe instead of giving them 6 months of innovative cohort, we are giving them just 4 weeks to do that. So we are pushing them to become companies or startups by the end of 4 weeks. That's what our main emphasis is. Less of theory. Theory will be given in a very, very high dose, but mainly we want them to be practically out there doing their business. That's the difference we want to make.
Can I add something over here?
Please, Adnan.
Okay. What I think, especially about the Pakistani startups and overall, basically Pakistani companies and manufacturers and all that, that we have to focus more on industrial technology and the use of, like, say, IT into industries, and how can we actually manufacture high-tech products that we can then export, right? This is something very, very important, that people realize that IT on its own, the model that India has been very successful in, which was that export of IT skills, is very good, but that is just one idea, and I don't think there is enough space left for that. In fact, even for India, the space is contracting. So the most important thing for us is, how do we implement IT into manufacturing? How do we take benefit of our expertise into manufacturing? That's one thing. The other is, which is very, very important, there is a huge contrast between our defense industry and our civilian manufacturing industry. When you look at our defense industry, since I've worked closely when I was based in Islamabad, our defense industry is far, far, far ahead of any, I mean, not even the Pakistani civilian industry, but just anywhere else in the world. I mean, like, we know that we have invented our own. I mean, we have created our own nuclear devices, missiles, and what we are doing in terms of JF-17 Thunder. Then we are doing in PAC Camera, the kind of things that we are doing for Boeing and others. I mean, like, these are tremendous achievements which people don't even know about, and there has to be a linkage between civilians and armed forces, technology organizations, right? And there has to be this transfer of skills, right? This is something, Jalal Saab, I would recommend you. I'm sure you people are already aware of it, and you must be working something around this idea. But sir, this linkage is very important. Forget about transferring technology from China and America or any place. We have that, all of it in Pakistan, right? We just have to use that expertise, that skill set, and transfer it to our civilian industry. That's my 2 cents about it.
I think it's one of those, and I can see Imran smiling. I'm sure. I've already spoken a lot. Let him speak on what I had, because I was actually controlling about 500 industries of Pakistan, and I had put them for defense production, and I motivated them. Some of them had actually been into defense, but out of 500, because I was the Director General Military Production, and in Director General Military Production, we had galvanized all these 500 companies to come over and start manufacturing of defense equipment. And it was a very, very successful experiment. Some of them are still there. In fact, 3 projects we undertook at the NUST and EME College, which I was commanding at that time. And one of them was extremely high tech, and that was mini UAV, which was to be given to frontline patrols. That is 3 or 5 people. They would just carry 4 UAVs on their back, and they could hand fly to about 5 kilometers and independently and autonomously. It had its own navigation system. So there is no dearth of technological know-how here. The only thing is, and similarly, now in the first part of our effort, the leadership part of the effort of this particular exercise we are conducting for the innovators or startups, there was one Brigadier Tariq Javed, who had offered it from PEC as a policy that anybody who wants to manufacture, especially in the field of medicine or medical, they are going to actually, as a policy matter, they are going to fund them, Ministry of Science and Technology, as well as Ministry of Defense. So we are into that direction, and I think very, very nice point brought out by you. But I think Imran should be adding to that, because indigenously, when I am the pioneer of Al-Zarar tank in Pakistan, from the drawing board to about 212 tanks which were manufactured in my factory. And I'm very proud of that. And similarly, my MS thesis was on its computer. And I think I should not be talking on that. Imran is witness to that, so let him talk.
But maybe, sir, we need to discuss this offline. I've got some very interesting ideas, which I discussed with Chaudhry Fawad. And he is very much, I think they are already, you people are already working together.
Yes. Yeah. Similarly, I think for with you, I think it will be a very, what you call it, a natural combination, because IBM was one time country manager was Fayaz Ahmed, who was my benchmate in UET Lahore. Okay. He was, so IBM is very close to our heart because of him, although he unfortunately died because of the cancer. Yes. But he was one of the country managers, very effective and successful one. So, sorry, Imran, over to you.
Oh, sir, thank you very much. Sir Adnan, we'll build this discussion further offline. But through an indigenization project, I got connected to General Obaid like 15 years back, and we worked together. It was his vision and his project, and then I contributed a little bit in that. That's how we started working together. That's how I came to in contact with General Obaid. And that's a very interesting story. We'll keep that for some other day, because we need to give time to Mark as well. Mark, we want to hear your story as well about building a technology company and then listing that to London Stock Exchange from Berlin to London.
Yeah, so I mean, so having done it, it's so first of all, I mean, if you're listening to this as a startup or if you're doing business, so first of all, it's unbelievably hard, and to be successful is almost impossible. So if you believe me, you're not an entrepreneur, because obviously entrepreneurs don't believe any of this stuff. It can't be that difficult, and it can't be impossible because I see other people doing it. It is hard, it's not impossible. So I created a business called Imaginatic when I was in my early 20s. So I was just finishing my PhD. I was working at Intel, but I had this idea that I wanted to be independent. So it started off from my own personal vision that I don't want to work for anybody apart from myself and for customers. I created my company pretty much with just a laptop, and I had savings from my employment at Intel. So that was my seed funding. And at the beginning, I pretty much did whatever anybody who would give me money, I would do that. So I didn't start off with a product. I started off with a desire to be close to customers and find out deeply what they wanted, find out what they were willing to pay for, and do that. During this process, I already learned some very valuable skills, and those skills are missing in Pakistan and in many emerging marketplaces. I was very fortunate to very quickly learn sales and marketing. So how do you promote yourself? How do you get your message out? But even more important than that, and particularly now, is how do you sell? How do you make actual money out of the stuff that you're making so that you don't cover your costs or cost plus 20%? How do you cover your costs and make 5 times more money selling something? So I then decided that I was fed up of doing more consulting and bits and pieces, that I wanted to move into the product world. I had 3 products in mind when I started, and I gave each of those products about 3 months to see if they would work, getting feedback from the marketplace. 2 of them didn't work out so well. 1 of them worked great. That one that worked great was an innovation management software product. So we built the platform, and we had one customer, IBM Lotus, so thanks again, IBM, who believed in us, could see that even though they were a tech company, we had some specialties. And we worked very closely with them, and they effectively gave us the money to build the product and money on top so that we could then do sales and marketing afterwards. I realized that I was sitting in the United Kingdom at the time, but I realized the US would be a very important market. So we had to become, let's say, more US-centric, and we also had to look for where the money was. In the United Kingdom, there are 4 or 5 banks. And that means that if you speak to 2 of the banks and the banks both say no to your product, you've run out of banks to go sell to. In the United States, at least at the time, there were 50 banks that you could go to. So I realized that I needed to have an international strategy, both in sales, in marketing. I needed to have a product that could be fitted to anybody, which also meant language and culture adaptation and various things, and an ability to sell to almost anybody profitably, but to remember to focus on the profitable market, because you make so much money from some customers that pays for all of your hiring budget for next year, your selling budget, and all of these things. As we began to focus on this idea management software, we were the first into the industry, but that doesn't help you too much if there's also no customers, because you're the first in that industry. So there was a period of intense competition as little companies would come in, and we would fight very aggressively over the first sales. Again, I refer back to sales and marketing. What we became good at was selling something that cost us $5,000 to make, selling it for an average price point of $110,000 per customer per year. So our expertise, if you like, was, we had fantastic technology, phenomenal technology, but the ability to extract revenue and profit at scale and then make this into a sustainable multi-year contractual business, that gave us enough stability to borrow a little bit of money, to invest, to persuade investors that we were a good company, and to every year have 5 or 10 more customers and grow. As the company hit about $1 million, what's interesting is the aspiration of the business leader, the founder that created it. I just decided that I wanted to take the company public. So one of my friends was a lawyer in the City of London, and he was taking companies public. And I thought, that's a good idea. I will do that. Now, he said it would be hard, it would be expensive, and it would take 1.5 years. I didn't believe him. I thought I could do it in 6 months. He was right. I was wrong. But this also goes into this notion that as an entrepreneur, as soon as you get your idea and fixated on something, if you listen to the market well, so you're doing something that is generally good and can work, your persistence can overcome any obstacle. You then, as a business leader, you begin to develop attitudes such as the answer is never no. It might kind of be no, but if you really need to achieve it, maybe there's another way that you can do the same thing. And I found, whether it's directly in operations with investors or with customers, the answer was, it was very important to do it. The answer was never no. It was always, let's think things through. So we made, as an innovation company, a lot of investment in innovation, creativity, how we can think differently to solve problems, not just for the people at the top of the company, but for everybody. And then once I began to go down the path, we were $1 million a year company. I managed to bump it up onto a trajectory of a $7 million a year going up and up and up company. So that then requires you sort of leave a scaling company, you leave a startup and you go into a scaling company, because then you need a layer of management and you need a variety of different things. Now, when we finally went public, so the cost of going public was just under $500,000. We raised about $4.5 million when we went public. You then have a different set of masters. You have the public shareholders that are your masters. You have a share price, which can, let's say, sort of show how good you're doing every day. Well, one of the things you learn is don't look at your share price, because the share price is actually stupid. It's stupid. Because it turns out your share price goes up because somebody wanted to buy and nobody wanted to sell, so your share price went up. So what is very, very important is you keep focus on your customers. What I found is this being deeply, like, loving what customers wanted. And I love customer revenue. I actually hate investor revenue. Can't stand it. I love customer revenue because that kept you very, very close. Then you get into the complexities of actually running a 40-person company, operating in 4 different countries, and so it's not easy. It's a hard thing to do. But when it was working, it was fantastic. So it's definitely possible. It's a lot harder work than you think. And even if you think it's going to be hard, it'll be 5 times as much. But the thing is that if you are able to do this, you have the ability, particularly in this international age where, fortunately, things like Zoom becomes normal, things like virtual trade shows become normal. It is possible for you to project an international business sitting from your own home in Islamabad. And this, I think, is an advantage you can take of this sort of cultural change that has been forced on us in the last 6 months, to actually be international businesses and make international money from wherever you are. But so yes, it was very, very hard. It was quite fun, and it was great fun. It's easy to get across how hard it is. It was tremendous fun. I remember selling my first $100,000 piece of software to a company. Brilliant fun. And then the first $1 million contract. Brilliant fun. Motivating, having a 19-year-old software engineer who was on a youth training program become our absolute top stellar engineer and being able to win us customers like crazy because he was just a genius. Brilliant fun. But tricky too.
They're a very encouraging story to listen to. But I have 1 or 2 questions, because we always try to add up, or we want to become cumulative on whatever we are teaching our people last week. So since we were on the leadership place, and you already pointed out, and we also advised them that it would be a very hard thing. It will not be a bed of roses. But then we also told them how to have the leadership qualities, overcome all that. But that's easier said than done. But you have done it. So my point is, how much time did it take from the initial conception to this stage in terms of years?
So very good question. So if I look at a timeline, I started my company when I was 24 years old. But that's not how I went public. I then pretty much did a consulting business in that corporate entity until I was about 29. When I was 29, I made 3 bets of 3 different products to do. And the results of those things came out when I was 30. So then this is 6 years after the founding of the business. As soon as when I turned 30 and I said, this is the thing that's going to work, it took them 6 years to go public. And what happened for the revenue is the revenue started for the first 4 or 5 years at around about, call it $200,000 a year. So I would call that a lifestyle business. I didn't really have employees. When I tried to jump up the business, the revenue was around 300,000 something, and it was a break-even business because I didn't have any borrowing. But then when I decided to make the software, then that revenue went up to $1 million and with some decent profit. I reinvested all the profit, and then I was getting up the revenue up to just below $10 million revenue in 6 years. So we were at the time one of Europe's fastest 500 growing companies, 500 growing fastest companies in Europe.
That's great. So secondly, you pointed out that you were looking for what people want. Were you looking at the wants or the needs?
Was I looking at the what, sorry?
Were you looking at their needs or the wants?
So I was looking for, this is a good logic for now. So I was looking for a product that would work when the economy was doing well and the economy was doing badly. Because when I graduated in 1991, there was a bad recession. And so I didn't want to have a product that only worked when companies had lots of money. I wanted to have a product which worked when companies were struggling, such as now. So that meant that I didn't come up with an innovation company per se. It was also used for cost reduction, taking out cost. My product could be used for both. So but then when I was looking, what I found was that there was a multitude of customer needs, masses of needs. And I decided that because I understood how software worked and configurability of software worked, I didn't want to have to only pick one segment. So on the engineering side, we built a product that could be very easily configured to do 500 different things. And then we became clever on the business side that we would only sell a package of 10 of those things. Mm-hmm. And that allowed us, when we began to scale, which is different. So at the beginning, you become very, very nimble. So in your startup phase, you don't know, getting money is good. So if you want me to give me money for that, I do that. But when you start to scale up, that's when you begin to look into markets. So the pharmaceutical market was very big for us, about 25-30% of the revenue. And then we went deeply, and I hired an MBA to do an exercise to understand what pharma companies liked about us and what they wanted more. And then I invested in a pharmaceutical sales rep, business development. We did a partnership deal with a pharmaceutical software so that we could grow our revenue within that vertical. But that's really a scaling thing that comes in a little bit later. So I wouldn't, in terms of needs and wants, so as an entrepreneur, it can be a semantic difference. It's kind of the same thing. But you're looking for the actual thing that IBM taught me with their solution signature selling methodology, which I did and they're really, really useful, is you have this critical reason to act, because it's not enough for the customer to want it. You need to get them to buy it now. So learning, I spent a few months of my personal time investment, and I also got sort of paid for a project to learn about how the selling methodology worked, to really frame what we had into what the customers wanted, and to teach my customers to extract wants and needs from the client so that we could always match it. And then we just had to justify the price point and then persuade/force customers to buy now.
Right. Actually, I was trying to add up to what Adnan was saying a little earlier. We looked at looking at one thing which we have already pursuing, and that is we are targeting multinationals and big firms. Why? Because they are downscaling themselves. They're putting their people layoff are there. So we thought, and we are trying to teach them that don't reduce the jobs. Make your company efficient through task automation, which actually brings in, as Adnan said, some products, and those products are all IT based. We are bringing in AI transferred or AI based certain products which are going to actually bring in more efficiency in task catering. That means actually you don't reduce the jobs. You reduce the jobs, but you upscale or make other people to take on the jobs of what people otherwise would have been laid off. So resultantly, your profitability increases because your efficiency has increased and your revenue stream also increases, because a lot of tasks which used to be manually done are going to be done by our artificial intelligence products. As a result, they will be free and available to you for other things for which you are not paying them extra. You are getting more out of them, but at the same cost as it was before. So lesser layoff, but more task-oriented addition.
I think this is it raises an interesting point about how, let's say, the difference between, let's say, an ecosystem and a systems perspective and an individual company perspective. As an individual company, I'm quite happy making the argument to say you can fire 20% of your workforce if you use our software. The reason why, and this is how many of the outsourcing companies have always sold it, is they're saying it's a cost reduction. You save 200 million here and you give 15 million to me. This is good for me. So the thing is that as an individual company, I really don't care that. I mean, I can make the argument to say your employees are more efficient. And of course, we will make that argument. But it depends who you're selling to in the organization. The other thing that right now is that this COVID thing will be an absolute bloodbath. And the bloodbath hasn't started yet, because the governments of the world have put so much money into businesses and unemployment. I mean, I've been writing training courses for the last 4 months. I haven't been paid by my company, so I'm technically unemployed, and the government of the United Kingdom is giving me money. It's brilliant fun. So I haven't felt, as somebody who hasn't been doing my normal consulting business, any loss of income. That largesse from the world will eventually stop, and then you'll see, I mean, next year will be brutal. Absolutely brutal. And as a startup, your goal is to make you and your employees happy, not to make sure that everybody else gets employed. Now, that's different from an ecosystem perspective. Then I would completely disagree with myself, and I would be much more agreeing with you.
No, Mark, sorry, but I think maybe I cannot change your mind. But every company wants. That's why I asked the question, want and need. Maybe it is not on the same, applied on the same particular person. There's a company who wants, exactly as you said, they would like to lay off, they would like to make more money. And while you are also suggesting to them, okay, lay off 50%, and I'll bridge that gap by introducing my software. I'm selling more, I'm making a profit. They're also making profit, but they're laying off. And the need of Pakistan is that we don't lay off. That's what is important. It's not actually. Sorry, let me finish off.
But the need of Pakistan is to make money for Pakistan. I'm talking about laying off jobs in the United Kingdom and America. Then you're fine with that.
No, I will extend my argument to even any country. Let me see. Let me explain it. I am trying to do what is that I'm trying to increase the want of that big company, multinational, to make more profit through introducing through AI or AI products or other products of automation, whereby they make profit. All right. But now I'm not telling them to lay off, because I'm making those people more efficient and giving them more, instead of 10 people being laid off, they don't lay off anybody, but they make the same profit. While we are giving them training for these new products and these people are employed there, we call this as an upskilling. And this upskilling is not only on technical grounds, it's almost also from the business point of view. In this case, this is a win-win situation for MNCs, which are multinationals, or any big company, while it is a win-win situation for those who are not getting unemployed. That's what my take is on that. And if we are successful, I would let you know what my ambition on that is. Sorry, Imran, over to you.
Sir, thank you. So Mark has also developed a framework, scaling framework, where he teaches how to scale a company or a business on a very thin resources. So he's authored a book also. He visited Pakistan. He conducted workshops in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad as well. And we would love to invite him again, as post-COVID maybe, to once again visit Pakistan and teach scaling in Pakistan. Thank you very much, Mark, for your comments and your story. So, Bakhtawar, would you like to ask?
Yeah, I think I have one question for Mr. Adnan, if Mustafa isn't joining back. So I think one of the initiatives, that's the Minhas startup ecosystem and opportunities for Pakistan. What are your comments about that? Sir, can you please unmute your mic? We cannot hear you.
Yes, can you?
Yeah. No.
Okay. So basically, I'll talk about MENA, but I'll talk about overall Pakistani startups as well, and how I see the ecosystem there. Starting with MENA, first of all, within Middle East, UAE is basically the main startups hub, right? And you can see that some of the most successful startups are from this region, like Kareem and Noon.com and Property.ae and all these. So this is the place. And over here, the government itself is very much interested in helping the startups. They are providing incubators. They are providing spaces for companies to work at, specialized assistance to them. Then, of course, there are local investors who are interested in investing. If you look at the total breakup of investment, you will see that most of the investment has come from the local investors, and less than 10% has come from the international markets, right? The place is really conducive. The environment is really conducive for startups. Another thing which I've seen recently here is that big group. As you probably know, that in the Middle East there are certain holding companies, certain group of companies who hold under their umbrella many different brands, many different companies, and they represent them in the region. So some of these big, huge groups are actually interested in startups. So they have been running startup competitions, out of which then they invest into some of the startups. In some cases, they have actually acquired some of the startups, right? And these startups are in different areas which they are working in, or some future areas where basically they see potential in the future. Like, for instance, one of the groups over here, Majid Al Futtaim, has taken 40% of stake in an AI company by the name of IM Plus, which is run by this very famous musician from America, right? He's a rap artist, and he's running this AI company. Likewise, there is another group who has just recently ran a competition, and then out of that competition acquired one company and put investment into multiple companies. So that is there, and that is an avenue for Pakistani companies to explore. Now, the problem over here is, I see that, again, like everywhere else, the problem is information flow. How do these Pakistani companies get to know what is happening, right? And where are the potential? So again, this is something which I just want to touch on this point, that we are working on an idea. When I say we, I mean there are some like-minded overseas Pakistanis, to create a platform where basically Pakistani companies, Pakistani startups, Pakistani manufacturers, they can actually communicate and collaborate with Pakistanis overseas, who can bring them insights about the international markets, the potential, the need in the international markets, what are the areas if these companies work in, or what are the products that the local companies manufacture that have a market in their respective countries. So this lack of information actually is a big problem, and this gap we are trying to fill. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I want to elaborate a little more on the startups. Listen, I already mentioned about these dreamer startups and doer startups. Now, the dreamer startups think that it's some kind of a very fancy game, and they have got these romantic notions about starting a new company, and then making it big overnight and becoming Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. Nothing like that happens, and nothing like this will ever happen, right? If you look at the successes of any startup, you will see that there is a lot of hard work behind it. The basics. You just heard from Mark, for instance, how long he had to work to get where he is, right? So you have to learn the business, the basics of the business, how to run a business, right? Sales, marketing, right? All of these things are very important. Finance. Don't think that Mark Zuckerberg is running Facebook. Don't think that Google was run by these three gentlemen, right? There are people, seasoned business people, who are actually running these companies right from the beginning. Once they were picked up because of their ideas and their potential. Yes, of course, you have to show your potential, but then after that, professionals have to run that. That's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that whenever we talk about startup, we always, and this is I'm talking about this is something that I've learned from interacting with a lot of startups, Pakistani startups in Middle East. That listen, a brilliant, innovative idea is not the only way, right? To be successful as a startup, right? This may be one of the ideas, but in fact, I think it would be more difficult if you have a new idea, because then you'll have to work on making it acceptable by people, right? Then you have to first sell the idea, and then basically run the business. One very important thing which we always forget is execution. Execution is more important than coming up with an idea. You have so many obvious examples in front of you. Kareem is, or it was not an original idea, right? Kareem was a copy of Uber, but see how they executed it. They executed it so well that they have been acquired by Uber, and then they chose their market where Uber was not there, right? So execution is most important than coming up with an idea. You can just pick any idea which is already working and make it better or execute it better, and do it in a market where you see that the original company is not present, right? Don't go after new ideas only. When I go and look at the list of startups, every startup has some idea which is completely new or never heard of. Good, excellent, right? But innovation should not only be in ideas. Innovation can be in operations. Innovation can be in execution. Innovation can be in go-to-market, right? Focus on that. Run it as a business. This is not a gimmick, right? Be serious about the success of your startup, right? And then you will be successful. One of the reasons I've not seen so many successes out of Pakistan are the reasons that I've just mentioned. And then when some serious people have started coming in, started running incubators. See, when I say serious people, business people, those who have run businesses, those who have been heading companies, and now when these people have come into the startup ecosystem, now our startups are getting traction. Now our startups are getting visibility. So please be real. I'll tell all the friends over here, be real, right? It's a business. It's not a game that someday will make you famous.
Thank you so much, Adnan, for the valuable advice. I think I will now move on to the question from General Obaid. So your vision for the $500 billion innovation economy by 2030, your take on that? Hello?
You asking me?
Gigi, sir, your take on the $500 billion economy that
Well, I started with that. As I said, this initiative of ours for the Global Innovation Center is all, I think, in line with 100%, in fact, 500% agree with Adnan. And I think Mark's story by itself tells you that it is the world of doers, all doers, and who take on and burn their ships and just go in, or who jump into a swimming pool and start swimming. They are the people who are going to learn. $500 billion in 10 years with knowledge economy. I believe the basic ingredients have now started making some sort of a ripple in Pakistan also. One of them pointed out by Adnan that there are serious business people who are successful business people. They are coming into and started understanding what startup and entrepreneurship and innovation is. And because of their success stories in business, they are combining them together. I always call this as a four-leg chair. It can only be stable. It cannot be stable on two legs, one leg. It has to be minimum three legs or four legs. So one is the innovation idea itself, which is the second is the technology, third is the finance, and fourth is the business. So unless some of the other people are lucky like Mark, all of these ideas are in one person, then he can go and home on single-handedly. But otherwise, you need a team of collaborators and who are success stories. Google is not run by three people. Yes, I agree. Similarly, Facebook is not being run. It has to be a teamwork. So as far as $500 billion economy by 2030 is a very, very well calculated bet. Let me tell you, somebody said this is an idea which we can laugh at. So somebody pointed out in a very senior, very successful businessman here who is just running $100 million company. And he said, if an idea is not laughed at, then the idea is not worth it. So I think I take lead from these words. They are very, very promising words and very encouraging words for me. We are going to divide this $500 billion in 10 years, and we are going to make concrete plans with milestones. And you will see it will be achievable. And as I earlier also said, if you are aiming for the stars, at least you can land on the Mars, or for that matter, even if you fail, you can land at least on Moon. That will be still an achievement. So 500 billion is our vision. And people may laugh. Let our laugh will be the last one. So that's what my take is on that.
Great, sir. So, sir, then I will just ask one question from each one of you again, and probably the answer should be in a couple of lines. That how optimistic you are for the Pakistani startup programs. So, probably we'll start with the Adnan sir. So, please unmute your mic first.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm an optimist, and by definition of an optimist, I always see bright spots. But let me tell you, I really believe in Pakistan, and when I say that, I'm not. This is not a rhetorical thing, which we say that जी बड़ा talent है इस मुल्क में. I'm not just repeating that. I'm saying is that we really are really good in terms of skill set, right? In terms of hard work, in terms of innovation and ingenuity. And this I'm saying after working with so many different nationalities and working in so many different countries over the last 28, 29 years. And now in the last 6 years, when I'm in Dubai, I'm working with like in my office, there are probably, I don't know, more than 30, 35 nationalities in one company. So we have the potential. Our kids have really what it takes. The problem is basically it's always comes to mentoring, telling them what to do, where to go, channelizing this thing, right? Bringing out their talent, right? advising them, counseling them what to do, right? Yeah, this is something which I have felt, because I felt this need when I was a youngster, and I feel this need even today, that it is not being met. Better than before, but still. So that's something which we all should try to do. That's one thing. The other is that in terms of market potential, and in terms of how we can, how can we become probably a bigger exporter of whatever we make. See, whenever we have got political stability, whenever we have got a government who has, consistency, who has been able to focus on governing, we always spring back. I remember this when we had General Musharraf as the chief executive and then president of Pakistan. I was based in Islamabad in those days, and I saw how businesses actually, literally sprang up, and how the international market started, giving us attention. But then we saw that Pervez Musharraf, although he himself was a professional soldier, but he had the vision of something which could work. So all he did was he did not know economy, right? He did not know business, and he accepts it, right? But what he knew was, and that was his strength, picking up the right people, right? Picking up the right people, and then giving them the freedom to work, right? So this is what everybody should do. I mean, I would recommend the current government that please pick professionals to do their job, right? Don't leave it to politicians who don't know these things, and don't leave it to bureaucrats who never stay in one job. Either make them professionals as well, and then give them careers in their own domain, right? So that they can help the industry. If you put somebody for 1 year in post office and then suddenly move him to commerce ministry and then ask him to perform and help the industry, nothing will happen. It does not happen like that, right? So like you have career professionals in finance, career professionals in foreign service. There should be career professionals in every ministry and every industry. Those who know what power sector is all about. Now the kind of things which are coming out about the kind of power deals we have done in the past. Why have we done such lousy deals? One reason is corruption, yes, of course, but the other reason is the lack of expertise with our bureaucracy. Right? Anyway, I mean, this is going to be a bigger discussion, but bottom line is there is potential.
Yeah. All right. So, similar question from Garrison. Sir, your take on how optimistic are you with Pakistan startup, and how do you foresee it?
Again, I can 500% agree with Adnan, because I have seen about 60 countries. For 4 years, I was in China, 2 years America. So two big technology and economic powers I have seen myself very deeply, and Europe, especially Germany. I believe Japan. I believe, and these are not my words. There are people who talk about Pakistanis, and they talk about they are second to none. The only thing is, as you remember, there was one of the speakers who said, from my experience of 3 years in stay in USA, I found out that whatever job could not be done by anybody else was given to Pakistanis. And this is not coming from a small person. It was the CEO of GM Motors. And he said, why are you keeping this Pakistani if you're so, he's so ill-disciplined. He said, he's only there for doing anything what nobody else can do. So I think that should be taken as a word on that. And let me tell you, even in 5 years of the LGU experience of mine, people have done wonders. And therefore, I can see a very bright future. But taking actually advantage of being here today with Mark and Adnan, I can see two people who are in their own fields, the best of the successful people. Let's start with collaborating, all three of us again, once again, and let's see. Adnan said mentoring, picking up the right people. Mark has an experience of management and then running a company. Let's see, 100 million companies. If we make up about 2,500 companies like that, we will be reaching $500 billion by 2030. So let's break it down to those small companies and let's work together. That is the collaborative skill, which is the need of time of tomorrow.
Right.
I'm always on board. I'm already doing my small part, but anything you want, let me know.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah, Mark, so a similar question from you as well. How do you foresee the Pakistani startup, and how do you foresee, how optimistic are you for this ecosystem in Pakistan?
So, I mean, I think I'm extremely optimistic. And I've been to Pakistan quite a few times over the last 2 years, and unfortunately, I wasn't. My trip got cancelled in March. Otherwise, I would have been here again. Things that I see: you have a large population, a young population, a population with ambition, who desperately want new things. So, as a base thing, that's good. You also have a large enough local population to make local businesses still work as well. Another thing. I think because the world has become more open to more remote, this then allows you to do international stuff more and more easily. So that's very important. Where I think the opportunities are, let's say, immediately, is that I think education was mentioned earlier, is that to see about how we can educate the Pakistan workforce and startup workforce into the skills that are second nature for Americans and for Europeans, that I think is quite essential. So how we can teach the skills around critical, very important. Now that's something we can work on, because I've actually been writing a course on this exact thing that I spoke to Imran about a couple of months ago. How to become a genius and all of these things. I think the other one then is how to acquire the skills to become good at sales and marketing. Because it's not enough in this day and age to have a good product.
Got it.
It's irrelevant. Pakistan companies have some incredibly good product, and then they get rolled up into somebody else's product, and other people get the margin. So understanding how to do sales and marketing at the top end, so you can get the top end of the money, not just the bottom end of the money, that's how you begin to chew into your next $100 billion of opportunity for Pakistan, and then growing up, treble it from there. I'm definitely not, and very, very happy to help. And education is something that I've been working in recently. And I noticed that Pakistan, when I was driving through Islamabad, every second place is a school. So you can see there's a knowledge of investment in education is important. I think we just have to look at what are we teaching people and how can we teach it better and quickly. And we could do that together.
So I think that was a very fruitful discussion session with all of our panelists. So Imran, over to you for the conclusion.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. It was a great session. Thank you very much to all the panelists. The idea really is to connect the Berlin startup ecosystem, the Dubai startup ecosystem to Pakistan, and then bringing leaders like Mark and Adnan Saab and connecting them to leaders like Jattala Saab in Pakistan. So that's the whole idea of CJ. This is what we're doing. We're trying to bridge this gap. And I see some amazing things coming out of this interaction. This is just the beginning. We're just connecting with three points. Expect some fireworks. So thank you very much, audience. So,
thank you very much, Imran. Thank you, Mark and Adnan. It was a pleasure meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much. Pleasure meeting all of you as well. One day we meet in person.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Take care.
Take care and a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.